They knew that we didn't have a product that could verify the market in that sense. Buyer, actually, I would say in the end, they didn't even ask for how many was paying. He reached out to me on LinkedIn almost exactly 1 year before we signed. For us, it's the patent, of course, for this core method and technology. Of course, one thing is timing.
Most of the time, if you want a company to get acquired, you need revenue. Ideally, recurring revenue. But that's not what happened today. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Ellen Andreasson, co-founder of Envue Technologies, a deep tech startup from Gothenburg, Sweden, that got acquired without any recurring revenue. We talked about what actually moved the deal forward, what's mattered for the acquirer instead of the customers, and how the relationship started long before any exit plans were in place. And before we get into it, if you like these kinds of conversations and want me to continue doing them, subscribe to the channel. It helps me genuinely more than you think. All right, now let's go talk to a startup over Fika. Please, Ellen, tell me about yourself, who you are, what Envue is, and how long you've been building.
Yes, thank you so much, Mohammed, for having me here. So I joined Envue 2021, so roughly 5 years ago. I'm still in 2025 mindset here. 5 years ago, I joined Envue Technologies. This was my first job after graduating on the biotechnology. Envue Technologies was a spin-out company, also from Chalmers. So one professor and two researchers had developed a new non-fluidic nano-microscopic technology, and they wanted to commercialize this technology. And then the company was a bit in the timing of exactly before COVID. So COVID came, it was a bit under pause from the company perspective, and then they hired me. So 2021 was the active operative start of Envue Technologies. And the goal was then to see how can we take this nano microscopic technology and commercialize it at the life science market as a standalone benchtop instrument, or as a service, or as a license, to explore different business models, how to create value from this method of studying non-objects.
And how did you manage to do that through the 4 years of your time there?
A lot of the time went into, of course, talking to potential customers and understanding the market, what's the different applications for this technology. Since it came from the opposite, instead of finding a problem and creating a solution, it went the other direction. You have a technology and you try to find a problem that you can solve. So that means the focus was always trying to understand what problems, in this case, applications for this technology, can we apply the instrument for. So talking to researcher in academia, but also talking to biotech companies, pharma companies, and build different use cases. In theory, and then, of course, trying to get samples, real samples for real use cases, measure with our technology, and then go back to the potential customer and in an iterative loop always ask, what's the value in this data? What's the need for you in this specific sample use case? And so on.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's just a long process of going back and forth between clients.
Yes, especially since the samples and the loops within life science and pharma is also very slow and heavily regulated. So it also takes a lot of time in between to get this from step to step.
Definitely. And since you've been acquired by now, what existed and what didn't within the company?
So at the time for acquisition, we had the method had been developed at Chalmers. That was even before Envue Technology was formed as a company. So that was a research project for 3 to 4 years before the company was formed. So
that was a patent?
So for 3 to 4 years of research at Chalmers, and then they decided to form the company to apply for the patent. And then they applied for the patent at the same time. So when I joined, there was already couple of insights from doing research and develop the technology. The proof of concept of the technology was there, and the IP was there. They had applied for the patent, but it was still pending when I joined. And when we also got the acquisition, we had one approved patent and we had 4 pending patents. Same patent, but in different regions. But that was more or less, and then there was, of course, a lot of know-how developed during these years, and there was a lot of data.
Okay, so it was basically intellectual assets and a lot of know-how and maybe
Yes.
some trade secrets within the deal as well.
Yes, exactly. There is one thing, of course, you can go to the Nature method to read the paper about this technology called nanofluidic scattering microscopy, which is the core of the business.
Yeah.
And that was the method. How can we study single nano objects in a new way without introducing the standard method, which is fluorescent labels, where you tag the nano objects that you want to study. So this was a label-free method with high resolution. So instead of seeing a bulk of objects, you can see single objects. And this method was then first breakthrough, which they published in Nature Method. So you can go there, you can read about the technology, and you can see some data. But there is, of course, one thing to read about it, and then there is a lot of know-how when you use the technology on real samples, and then there is a lot of trade secrets and know-how developed.
Yeah, and I, of course, understood everything that came out of your mouth there.
I like to compare this to smoothie. Okay, so if you have a smoothie, which is in this case could be, when I talk about a smoothie, it's like a sample from pharma, a COVID sample. You want to develop a new COVID vaccine, and the sample looks like a smoothie. You don't know, if I give you a smoothie, what's inside this smoothie. You can guess maybe, and you can have some ideas, but you don't know. But with this single nanoparticle or molecule methods, you get each ingredients. You can see 3 strawberries, 3 apples, whatever you have. It's so high resolution, so you can get the precise objects you have inside. And for some use cases and some applications, that might be very valuable if you want to understand something, to connect the dots. In some applications, it doesn't matter. It's not useful.
Sometimes you just want to know what the smoothie has inside of it, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's a great analogy, Ellen. So just to be clear, Envue had no paying customers at the time of the acquisition, correct?
We had some ongoing collaborations where we measured the different samples, and we had a couple of pilot customers and paying services for using. They sent a sample and then they paid for us doing the measurement. But the long-term goal was always to sell a standalone instrument. So this was just a very first step, because there was still a long roadmap left to develop the product.
Kind of a proof of concept then.
Yes.
So how many of these partnerships did you feel were enough to kind of build this trust and credibility?
To Bayer, actually, I would say in the end, they didn't even ask for how many, who was paying. They, of course, cared about the credibility and that the technology worked as we claimed, and to see the real data. And we even tested, of course, the instrument with their own samples so that they could do their own validation beyond what we showed them, like data that we have created with other potential customers. So they were very focused, of course, as they should, on the due diligence on the technology and that it worked and how it worked, but not much on the market proof, because we were still so early. So they knew, and they knew that we didn't have a product that could verify the market in that sense.
And did you feel like that was kind of a missed opportunity on your guys' side, or did you feel like any pressure to generate some sort of revenue to showcase the credibility and even maybe increase the valuation of the company?
I mean, for the acquisition, actually, no. I mean, as a company, an early stage, yes, because of course, for any early company, the only real proof of a valid business model and company case is, of course, to have someone paying for it. It also probably depends on how this acquisition happened. If we had planned for it, I mean, now it more happened. That's one way to phrase it. I mean, since we had what we had when they entered.
How did they get in contact with you guys? Did you reach out, or did they find the technology and thought we need this, or how did it play out?
It was actually, of course, when the exit process were escalating, and in the end I had to go back in history myself, because I started to wonder, how did we end up here? So I went into my LinkedIn and I searched, and I found that we connected maybe 2 years, 1.5 years before. And then he reached out to me on LinkedIn almost exactly 1 year before we signed the exit. So he reached out to me on LinkedIn And if I remember correctly, but I couldn't find that data, I think I added him originally because I saw the space and and the CEO, he was the co-CEO and the co-founder at that point. He is very active on LinkedIn. He's a very good ambassador for the entire life science tool. He's like an influencer, according to me, in this space. It's not so common.
Micro influencer.
Yes, exactly. No influencer. So I saw him and I connected because I felt like he seems like a key person in this field globally. Like, to me, he's like Elon Musk for bioanalytical tools. So I think I added him, but then he wrote to me that he wanted to have a meeting because it sounded like we had an interesting technology. So clearly he saw our technology and then saw something with this single label-free method, and then he reached out. And then we had a very informal meeting, just the two of us, and we talked a lot, of course, about the companies and the technologies, but even more, I would say, on the founder journey of creating a deep tech bioanalytical tool company. And he told me his founder journey and some lessons and learnings. And he was very interested in building companies and entrepreneurs. So we really connected on those points. So after that meeting, I remember I told one of my co-founders that you have to meet this person because this person, he is a key person. I felt it that this is a person that something very important will happen with this person. He will become a mentor, a potential partner, a potential future acquisition opportunity. I also said that at that point.
And how do you feel the meeting, like, because I'm assuming there was no set goals from that meeting.
Yep.
And how did it play out after that then to get into the whole acquisition format? Was it more maybe you suggested it, or maybe he was like, you know what, this is something that we need? And how long time did it take until that kind of discussion started?
Yeah, so I remember now when I looked at it, this was in May 2024, and the acquisition happened in summer 2025, so a year after. During that meeting, just like you said, there was no agenda, there were no goals. It was this informal explorative meeting, but we both obviously then felt that this was a really good connection and match on the personal level and on the professional level. So we said we need to have a follow-up meeting, and I said you should meet my co-founder because he's from Germany and this was a German company, and I really want to continue this conversation in one way or another. So we said already that we should have a follow-up meeting at some point with my other co-founder. So we did have that maybe 2 months later. And then we said, because that was also a good meeting, I felt the same kind of, this is a too good person to not form a long-term relationship. We want them for one way or another. We want to collaborate or partnership or advisor or potential board member or so many opportunities. So then we said, okay, next. So at every meeting, we at least decided in the end, what should we do next? So we didn't just leave it by chance. So after that meeting, we decided that he wanted us to meet his tech team. They could give him their opinion of the technology in depth. There was a couple of months where nothing happened because, of course, there were no clear goal or agenda. So we just said we should do that. And at that point, we didn't have that exit as a strategy in the company. But then after those couple of months, change in the company forced us to take a decision of priorities of what options we would like to. And that's what we would prefer. And then we had plan B and plan C, but we wanted to focus on getting an exit as the first option. So that's when I reached out to them again and said, should we have that tech meeting that we talked about? And then we set it up in November, December 2020.
That's super interesting because you started off with no other intentions more than just creating this relationship with this leader in the industry. And then once the goals internally aligned, you were like, this is the perfect person to kind of acquire us. And a lot of deep tech acquisitions end up just being about the team, right? And I feel that's a lot in your case as well. How did you avoid that and keep this as an asset-led acquisition?
I think during that autumn, like you said, internal strategy aligned. We did a lot of research, of course, like the market. Where is this market going? What's the trend? What will happen from a market position? We did it from a finance perspective. I mapped different options. Of course, there is always the VC capital. And in this, it was a lot of work on doing this mapping, just understanding the investment landscape, market landscape, and potential and acquisition partners or partnerships. We also had to do a real due diligence of ourselves. And then we did clear what's our strengths, what's our uniqueness compared to any other companies out there, because of course that's the question in the end. And then it's clear for us, it's the patent, of course, for this core method and technology. That's the core and essence of Envue Technologies. And then the know-how, how to use it and everything surrounding, how to connect the instrument with the consumable nanochip, with the software, and how to interpret the data. So it's everything around this core patent technology. And then we had to do another mapping, of course. So what are we missing and what's the main skills or infrastructure to get us to the next step? And then it's clear, of course, a lot of resources because it's expensive to develop hardware and software and consumables. It's not very VC attractive. That was clear very early on when I started at the company. And then beyond the resources, skills in engineering, and there are so many different skills when you want to build this hardware. It's optical, electronic, mechanical, quality, bioanalytical for the applications. And as a startup, it's either very hard to find like few people who have so many skills at that stage, or you use consultant, but then you lose the know-how competence. So when we had this clear mapping, what we are good at and what we are missing, it was also clear when we talked to them, the company, the acquiring company, that they are the best in everything that we are missing, but they are missing our technology and the know-how how to use the technology. And after the acquisition, of course, we can always now afterwards also see that when they posted their LinkedIn press release, they wrote that for them, it had been a dream to do single molecule label-free analysis. So we matched what they were missing and they matched what we were missing. That was the strength we had and that was the strength they had. And therefore, the team was not what they were missing. They have a super skilled, highly engineered competence, and they are experts in bringing advanced optical technologies to the market, which is exactly what we mapped, that this is what we are missing to actually be successful.
So if you could summarize it, I guess the thing that kind of moved the deal forward was that just finding the exact puzzles that they missed and the ones that you needed to complete yourself and just put them together, and it resulted to a very successful acquisition. So
yeah,
congratulations.
I like to compare it to dating, right? You find a person and you realize either this is the perfect match or either it's not a perfect match because you don't have the same vision. In this case, I felt it from the beginning. This is a perfect match in vision and complementary from what resources or skills we had from the different sides.
Yeah, well, I'm just happy you didn't have to spend a 3-year situationship with them. All right, so we've kind of summarized how you guys got acquired and what needed to be done. What would you say needs to be true for a company to be acquired without selling anything?
I mean, of course, one thing is the timing. I mean, you need to find, you cannot say, okay, tomorrow we want to buy the company and sell the company and try to find a buyer. And I think it's rather the opposite, that first be very good at understanding what's your uniqueness and how you can put yourself in a good position at the market. And then you need to find a buyer that complements that. So that you are complementing their portfolio. And in some cases, of course, it might still be too early. They might say, I mean, it's probably also due to the structure of the company buying you. What do they require? So you need to find a match of strategy alignment at the same time.
Understand their needs.
Their needs and the timing. I mean, when I talked to them the first time, they had no active work, to my understanding at that point, to buy some companies. That was just also interesting for them. We talked about it briefly, But when I reached out during the autumn to have this follow-up meeting, the timing in that much better. So it's finding a perfect complement, what makes sense from both perspectives. And then there is the timing, of course, that they are looking for expansion or acquiring a company, and they have the budget.
Amazing. And now wrapping up with the last question, and you've had already such a successful career as an entrepreneur, but looking back, what would you kind of do differently if you could start this journey all over?
Hopefully I will start this journey over, not this company, of course, another journey. So I will use all these lessons, of course, in my next venture. That is the plan. But if I look back, what was the key successful parts from start to the exit? So cliche to say it, but it is for sure for me now, at least personally, it was the network. I mean, he found me on LinkedIn because I was actually better at being active at LinkedIn than I was very active then in finding who are the key opinion leaders, key speakers and influencers in this space. And I was active on finding them, interacting with them on LinkedIn, both LinkedIn, but also networking events and all these kind of different opportunities. So, I mean, otherwise he wouldn't have found me, I think, and we wouldn't have found each other. So it's networking when you don't need people and creating real relationships, because that's also what was very important in this deal. I felt a personal connection, from a real personal connection, not just about the business.
100%. That's amazing advice, and I hope someone out there will take it to heart and just start networking their ass off.
Thank you, Ellen. And if you strip this whole story down, the main takeaway isn't that revenue doesn't matter. It's that revenue isn't the only proof that matters. In Envue's case, the acquisition happened because the technology was genuinely unique, the fit was right, and the relationship was built long before anyone talked about an exit. That's a very different picture from how exits are usually talked about. And hopefully this gives you a little bit of a clearer way on how to think about what you're building today. Thanks for watching Startup Fika. See you in the next one.